My name is Olivia Harper and I'm 37 years old. Never in my life did I imagine I would be sharing a story like this. I'm not a preacher or a theologian, just a regular woman, a nurse, a mother, and a wife. But what happened to me on a crisp morning in September 2023 changed everything. It was the day I died and came back. That morning started like any other. The alarm clock went off far too early and I shuffled through my usual routine, brushing my teeth, feeding the dog, and making sure my kids had their lunches packed. The sun was just beginning to rise and the air was crisp with the early signs of fall. The trees in Greenville, South Carolina were already turning vibrant shades of gold and red. It was beautiful. Yet something felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was a strange heaviness in the air that morning. I had a mild headache and a lingering sense of unease, but I chalked it up to being tired from my shift at the hospital the night before. I'm a nurse at Greenville General, and shifts can be demanding. That day, I had an early start because of a new training session, and I didn't want to be late. So I got into my car, put on my favorite playlist, and started driving. As I made my way through the quiet streets, I noticed how beautiful the morning was. The way the sunlight danced through the trees and the gentle mist that lingered over the fields. It felt serene, almost otherworldly. But as I approached a sharp bend in the road, that serenity shattered in an instant. My car suddenly skidded on a slick patch of road, the wet pavement turning into a sheet of ice beneath my tires. I hit the brakes, but nothing happened. The car swerved violently, and I desperately tried to regain control. Ahead of me, a massive oak tree loomed larger and larger until everything went black. The next thing I knew, everything had changed. I wasn't in my car anymore. I wasn't even in the world I knew. I was floating, weightless, above the wreckage of my car. Below me, I could see myself slumped over the steering wheel. Blood trickled down my face and my body was eerily still. It was strange to see myself like that, but I didn't feel pain or fear. Instead, I was enveloped by an overwhelming sense of peace. A peace so profound it felt as though I were being wrapped in the warmest, softest blanket of love imaginable. As I floated higher, a radiant light began to appear in the distance. It wasn't just bright. It was alive. It pulsed with warmth and love, calling me toward it like a magnet. And as I moved closer, I realized I wasn't alone. The peace I had, felt just moments earlier, admiring the beauty of the morning, shattered in an instant. The serene drive turned chaotic as my car began to slide on the slick road. At first, it was just a slight wobble, but within seconds, the wheels lost their grip entirely. I could feel the tires spinning helplessly beneath me as the car veered out of control. My heart raced as panic surged through me. I instinctively pressed the brakes, but they didn't respond. The road felt more like ice than asphalt, and my hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, desperately trying to steady the car. Ahead of me, the sharp curve of the road loomed closer, and beyond it stood a massive oak tree, its dark trunk and sprawling branches unmoving, indifferent to my impending collision. My stomach churned as I realized I couldn't stop the car. Everything seemed to blur. The wet road, the golden leaves, the sunlight filtering through the trees, all merging into a chaotic swirl. And then, the crash came. A deafening explosion of sound erupted as my car smashed into the unyielding oak. Metal crumpled like paper, glass shattered into 1,000 sparkling shards, and the impact jolted my entire being. The force threw me forward, the seatbelt digging painfully into my chest. The airbag deployed with a violent hiss, cushioning the blow but adding to the confusion. The smell of burnt rubber and gasoline filled the air, choking and acrid. And then, silence. For what felt like an eternity, there was nothing. No sound, no movement, no pain. It was as though time itself had stopped. Slowly, I became aware of a strange detachment. The chaos of the crash seemed distant, like something happening in another world. I was no longer in my body. I was hovering above the wreckage, weightless and free, as if I had become a silent observer to my own tragedy. I looked down and saw the scene unfold beneath me. My car was barely recognizable, its front end crumpled like an accordion around the base of the tree. Steam rose from the hood, mingling with the morning mist, while shards of glass littered the ground like scattered diamonds. Inside the car, I could see my own body slumped against the airbag. My head tilted to the side, blood dripping from a gash on my forehead. My face was pale, lifeless. Strangely, I felt no fear at the sight of myself. Instead, a profound calm washed over me, unlike anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't numbness. It was peace, pure and overwhelming, as though I were being cradled in invisible arms of comfort. The pain, the panic, the confusion, all of it melted away, replaced by an undeniable sense that everything was okay, even though nothing about the scene below seemed okay at all. As I floated higher, I noticed movement around the wreckage. A few cars had pulled over and concerned strangers were rushing toward the crash. I saw a man in a flannel shirt sprinting toward my car, his arms waving frantically as he shouted something I couldn't hear. A woman wearing a bright pink jacket pulled out her phone, dialing for help, her expression etched with urgency. A younger man in a baseball cap knelt by the driver's side window, trying to pry open the crumpled door. Their voices reached me faintly, muffled and distant, as though I were hearing them from underwater. I wanted to tell them I was okay, that they didn't need to worry. But when I tried to speak, nothing happened. My voice, my body, they were no longer mine to control. Yet, the inability to communicate didn't trouble me. Instead, I felt a pull, a gentle tug upward, away from the chaotic scene. It was as though something or someone was calling me. Then, I saw it. A light appeared in the distance, soft at first, but growing brighter with every moment. It wasn't like the harsh glare of headlights or the sterile brightness of hospital lights. This light was warm, alive, and inviting. It seemed to pulse gently, as though it had a heartbeat of its own, and it radiated a love so profound that it brought tears to my eyes. I felt drawn to it, like a magnet pulling me closer. The wreckage below, the concerned strangers, my own broken body, all of it began to fade into the background as my focus shifted entirely to the light. The closer I came, the more I felt an overwhelming sense of love and peace, unlike anything I had ever known. It wasn't just an absence of fear, it was the presence of something so much greater, so much more powerful. The light seemed to envelop me, wrapping me in its warmth and pulling me closer with every passing second. And then, I realized I wasn't alone. Within the light, a figure began to take shape. At first, it was just an outline, but as I drew nearer, I could see him clearly. A man bathed in radiant light, his presence both comforting and awe-inspiring. He stood tall, his arms outstretched, and his eyes filled with kindness and love, met mine. I didn't need to ask who he was. I knew instantly, with every fiber of my being, that it was Jesus. The light grew brighter as I moved closer, but it wasn't harsh or blinding. Instead, it enveloped me in warmth and love, a love so profound that it brought tears to my eyes. The world I had known, the wreckage, the chaos, the pain, faded away, replaced by this radiant glow. Within the light, a figure began to emerge. At first, it was just an outline, but as I drew nearer, I saw him clearly. He stood tall, bathed in light that seemed to flow from him like a living force. His eyes were filled with kindness and understanding, and his smile radiated a peace that words cannot describe. I didn't need to ask who he was. I knew with every fiber of my being that it was Jesus. "Welcome, Olivia," he said, his voice both gentle and powerful, resonating deep within me. "You are here because there is something you must see, something you must understand." Tears streamed down my face, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of joy, of relief, of knowing that I was fully seen and fully loved. "Lord," I whispered, though I wasn't speaking with my lips. It was as though my thoughts and feelings were directly understood. Why am I here? What is my purpose? Jesus smiled, and the warmth of his presence seemed to grow. He said, "The purpose of mankind is to know God, to love him, and to share his love with others. Each person is created with a unique plan, a purpose that only they can fulfill. Your life is part of that greater design." As he spoke, scenes from my life began to appear around us. It was as if the light itself transformed into a living tapestry, showing moments both joyful and painful. I saw times when I had helped others, small acts of kindness, comforting a patient, encouraging a friend. Those moments filled me with a deep sense of peace. But then I saw moments when I had been selfish or unkind, and a wave of regret washed over me. Jesus reached out and touched my shoulder. "Do not dwell on your mistakes, Olivia," he said. "What matters is that you learn from them and grow in love and faith. Every stumble is an opportunity to rise stronger, to draw closer to me." His words were like balm to my soul, soothing the guilt and filling me with hope. I felt an overwhelming desire to understand more, to ask the questions that had always lingered in my heart. "Lord," I asked, "why is there so much suffering in the world? If God loves us, why does he allow pain and hardship?" Jesus' expression grew tender, yet there was a trace of sorrow in his eyes. "Suffering exists because of sin in the world," he said. "It was not part of God's original plan, but through free will, humanity has brought brokenness into creation. Yet even in suffering, God's love remains. He uses trials to teach, to strengthen, and to bring people closer to him. What may seem like a loss is often the beginning of a greater purpose." I thought about the accident, about how fragile life is. "Is that why I'm here now?" I asked. "To learn something from this?" Jesus nodded. "Partly," he said, "but also to remind you how deeply you are loved and to give you a message to share. Your journey on earth is not finished, Olivia. There is still work for you to do." A part of me felt reluctant. This place, this presence was so perfect, so full of peace and love. I didn't want to leave. "But how can I go back?" I asked. "How can I live in a world so broken after experiencing this?" Jesus' gaze met mine, steady and filled with compassion. "You will not go back alone," he said. "I am always with you. My strength will sustain you, and my love will guide you. Remember, Olivia, your purpose is not to fix the entire world, but to be a light within it. Love God with all your heart, love others as yourself, and trust in my plan. Even the smallest act of kindness can create ripples that reach far beyond what you can see." As he spoke, the light around us seemed to shift, revealing more scenes, not just from my life, but from the world. I saw people helping one another after disasters, families praying together, and individuals reaching out to strangers with compassion. But I also saw pain, wars, hunger, and cruelty. My heart ached at the sight. "This is why your purpose is so important," Jesus said. "The world needs more love, more kindness. Every act of love, no matter how small, makes a difference. It's like a pebble thrown into a pond. The ripples spread far and wide." I nodded, the weight of his words sinking in. "I'll try," I said. "I'll do my best." Jesus smiled again, his eyes shining with encouragement. "That is all I ask, Olivia. Trust in me, and I will do the rest." As I stood in the radiant light, enveloped by a love so pure it brought tears to my eyes, Jesus continued to speak, his voice both powerful and tender. "Olivia," he said, "you are here because there is a message I need you to carry, a truth that the world desperately needs to hear." I felt an overwhelming mixture of emotions, gratitude for being in his presence, awe at his wisdom, and a deep desire to understand. "Lord," I asked, "what is this message? What is it that I need to share?" Jesus looked at me, his gaze filled with both love and urgency. The world is in need of light, Olivia. So many have lost their way, distracted by the noise of the world, by fear, and by doubt. Your purpose is to remind them of my love, to show them that they are never alone. Each act of love, each word of encouragement has the power to bring them closer to me. He paused, and the light around us seemed to shift, forming images of people in their daily lives. I saw families gathered around dinner tables, children playing in parks, and workers going about their routines. But I also saw scenes of pain, people crying alone, others burdened by heavy loads they carried silently, and some walking through life with empty eyes. "Do you see them, Olivia?" Jesus asked, his voice soft yet commanding. "These are my children, each one known and loved by me. But so many of them have forgotten. They carry burdens they were never meant to bear, trying to navigate life on their own. Your role is to be a reminder, a living testimony of my presence and my love." I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "Lord, I want to help. I want to be that light, but I feel so small. What can I possibly do to make a difference?" Jesus smiled, his expression one of deep reassurance. "You are never too small when you walk with me. Remember the boy with the loaves and fishes? He offered what little he had, and through him, I fed thousands. Give me what you have, Olivia, and I will multiply it. Trust in me, and I will work through you." His words filled me with a profound sense of purpose, but they also brought questions that had long lingered in my heart. "Lord," I asked hesitantly, "why is there so much suffering in the world? If you love us, why do so many people hurt?" For a moment, Jesus' expression grew somber, and there was a deep sadness in his eyes. "Suffering was never part of my Father's plan," he said. "It came into the world through sin and free will. But even in the midst of suffering, I am present. I use what is broken to create beauty. I bring strength through trials and hope through despair. What may seem like a loss in the moment often leads to a greater purpose, though it may not be visible until much later." I thought about the accident, about how fragile life is. "Is that why I'm here now?" I asked. "To learn something from this pain?" Jesus nodded gently. "Partly," he said, "but also to remind you of how deeply you are loved and to give you a message to share. Your journey on earth is not yet finished, Olivia. There is still much for you to do." Though I felt comforted by his words, a part of me hesitated. "But Lord," I said, "the world feels so broken. How can I return to it after experiencing this? How can I live in that darkness after being here, in your light?" Jesus' gaze met mine, steady and filled with compassion. "You will not return alone," he assured me. "I am always with you. My strength will sustain you, and my love will guide you. Remember, Olivia, your purpose is not to fix the entire world, but to be a light within it. Even the smallest act of kindness, the gentlest word of encouragement, can create ripples that reach far beyond what you can see." As he spoke, the light around us shifted again, forming scenes from my own life. I saw moments of kindness, comforting a patient in their final moments, encouraging a colleague who was struggling, and even simple acts like smiling at a stranger. But I also saw times when I had been impatient or unkind, and a wave of regret washed over me. Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder, and the warmth of his touch melted away my guilt. "Do not dwell on your mistakes," he said. "Every stumble is an opportunity to rise stronger. Learn from them, grow in love and faith, and trust that I am with you every step of the way." His words brought me a sense of peace I had never known before, but I still had questions. "Lord," I asked, "what about those who don't believe in you? What happens to them?" Jesus' expression grew solemn. "My Father loves all his children," he said. "He reaches out to them in countless ways, through nature, through others, through the quiet voice in their hearts. But love cannot be forced. Each person must choose whether to accept or reject it. Those who turn away from me choose separation, and that separation is what you know as hell. But never stop praying for them, Olivia. Your prayers are powerful, and your love can plant seeds that I will water. The light around us brightened as he continued. When you return, Olivia, do not fear sharing what you have seen and heard. Some will listen and believe while others may not. But your task is not to convince, it is to share, to love, and to trust that I will do the rest. I nodded, my heart filled with both awe and determination. I will, Lord, I said. I'll do my best. Jesus smiled, and his love surrounded me like a warm embrace. That is all I ask, Olivia. Walk with me, trust in me, and know that you are never alone. You are my light in the world, and through you, others will find their way to me. His words resonated deeply within me, filling me with strength and hope. I knew that my journey wasn't over, but I also knew that I would never walk it alone. As I stood there in the presence of Jesus, more questions began to flood my mind. Questions I had wrestled with for years but never fully understood. Lord, I asked hesitantly, what about the people who don't believe in you? What happens to them? Jesus' gaze softened, but I could see a deep sorrow in his eyes. My Father loves all his children, he said. He reaches out to them in countless ways, through the beauty of creation, the kindness of others, and the quiet voice within their hearts. But love cannot be forced. Each person must choose whether to accept or reject it. Those who reject my love choose separation, and that separation is what you know as hell. His words struck me deeply, filling me with both clarity and sorrow. But Lord, I asked, is there hope for those who have never heard of you? What about those who seek truth but don't know where to find it? Jesus nodded, his expression full of compassion. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Those who seek truth with an open heart will find me, even if they do not recognize my name at first. My Father's love is patient, and he works in ways beyond human understanding to reach every soul. This brought me comfort, but it also stirred a sense of responsibility. How can I help them, Lord? How can I show your love to those who feel lost or uncertain? Jesus smiled gently. Live as an example of my love, Olivia. Be kind, patient, and forgiving. Do not judge others for their beliefs, but show them through your actions what it means to walk with me. Your life can be a light that draws others closer to the truth. I nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle in my heart. But more questions followed. Lord, why do some people seem to have harder lives than others? Is it fair that some suffer so much while others seem to live with ease? Jesus' expression grew thoughtful. Life is not always fair by human standards, Olivia. Each person's journey is unique, with its own challenges and blessings. But remember this, I am with every person in their struggles. Sometimes, the hardest trials bring the greatest growth. They refine the soul, drawing people closer to me and teaching them compassion and strength. I thought about times in my own life when I had faced hardships, moments of loss, pain, and uncertainty. Those times had shaped me, teaching me resilience and a deeper reliance on God. So, suffering can have a purpose? I asked. Jesus nodded. Yes, Olivia. Suffering is not something I desire for my children, but it can be used for good. It can deepen faith, foster empathy, and open hearts to my presence. Trust that no pain is ever wasted in my plan. Another question surfaced, one that had lingered in my heart for years. Lord, what about our work? Is it part of our purpose too? Jesus smiled warmly. Yes, work is a gift from God. It is an opportunity to use the talents you have been given to serve others and glorify my Father. Whether you are teaching children, caring for the sick, or building a home, when you work with love and integrity, you honor me. I thought about my role as a nurse, and suddenly it felt so much bigger than just a job. So even the small things matter? I asked. Jesus nodded. Everything done with love matters. A kind word, a helping hand, a moment of patience. These small acts create ripples that extend far beyond what you can see. The more we talked, the more my questions began to feel less like doubts and more like revelations. I realized that the answers I sought were not always simple, but they were rooted in love, faith, and trust. As I stood there, bathed in the light of his presence, I felt a new sense of clarity and purpose forming within me. "Thank you, Lord," I said, my voice trembling with emotion, "for answering my questions and for showing me the way." Jesus smiled, his eyes shining with encouragement. "Never stop asking, Olivia. Questions lead to growth, and growth leads to a deeper understanding of my love. Trust that I am with you always, guiding you toward the truth." As the light around us began to shift once again, I felt a gentle tug, as if something was pulling me back toward the world I had left behind. I looked at Jesus, my heart filled with both gratitude and reluctance. "Is it time for me to go?" I asked softly. Jesus nodded, his gaze tender and understanding. "Yes, Olivia. Your journey on earth is not yet finished. There is still much for you to do. Remember all that you have seen and heard, and share it with those who will listen. Not everyone will believe, but that is not your burden to carry. Your task is to speak the truth with love and to let your life reflect my light." Tears welled in my eyes as I realized I would have to leave this perfect peace, this overwhelming love. "Lord," I said, "I'm afraid. What if I'm not strong enough? What if I forget all of this when I go back?" Jesus reached out and placed his hand on my shoulder, and instantly, a wave of strength and reassurance washed over me. "You will not walk this path alone," he said. "I am with you always. When you feel weak, lean on me. My strength is made perfect in your weakness. Trust in my guidance, and I will provide all that you need." He paused for a moment, his expression both loving and firm. "Remember, Olivia, the smallest acts of love can change the world. Be a light in the darkness, a beacon of hope for those who feel lost. And know that my love for you is unchanging no matter what challenges you face." The light around us grew brighter, and I felt myself beginning to drift away. "Thank you, Lord," I whispered, my voice filled with emotion. "I'll do my best." Jesus smiled, his eyes shining with encouragement. "That is all I ask. Go now, Olivia, and live out your purpose. Share my love with the world and trust that I am always with you." And with that, the radiant light began to fade, and I found myself being pulled back into the world I had known. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in a hospital bed, surrounded by the worried faces of my family. My journey had only just begun. As the light around us began to shift once again, I felt a gentle tug, as if something was pulling me back toward the world I had left behind. I looked at Jesus, my heart filled with both gratitude and reluctance. "Is it time for me to go?" I asked softly. Jesus nodded, his gaze tender and understanding. "Yes, Olivia. Your journey on earth is not yet finished. There is still much for you to do. Remember all that you have seen and heard, and share it with those who will listen. Not everyone will believe, but that is not your burden to carry. Your task is to speak the truth with love and to let your life reflect my light." Tears welled in my eyes as I realized I would have to leave this perfect peace, this overwhelming love. "Lord," I said, "I'm afraid. What if I'm not strong enough? What if I forget all of this when I go back?" Jesus reached out and placed his hand on my shoulder, and instantly, a wave of strength and reassurance washed over me. "You will not walk this path alone," he said. "I am with you always. When you feel weak, lean on me. My strength is made perfect in your weakness. Trust in my guidance, and I will provide all that you need." He paused for a moment, his expression both loving and firm. Remember, Olivia, the smallest acts of love can change the world. Be a light in the darkness, a beacon of hope for those who feel lost. And know that my love for you is unchanging, no matter what challenges you face. The light around us grew brighter, and I felt myself beginning to drift away. "Thank you, Lord," I whispered, my voice filled with emotion. "I'll do my best." Jesus smiled, his eyes shining with encouragement. "That is all I ask. Go now, Olivia, and live out your purpose. Share my love with the world, and trust that I am always with you." And with that, the radiant light began to fade, and I found myself being pulled back into the world I had known. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in a hospital bed, surrounded by the worried faces of my family. My journey had only just begun. When I opened my eyes, the sterile white walls of the hospital room slowly came into focus. The rhythmic beeping of machines was the first sound I heard, grounding me in the reality that I was alive. My husband's tearful face hovered over mine, and his trembling hand held mine tightly as he whispered, "Olivia, you're back. We thought we lost you." I managed a faint smile, though my body still felt heavy and weak. "I'm here," I said, my voice hoarse. "There's so much I need to tell you." In the days that followed, I began to share my story with my husband and close family members. At first, I struggled to find the words to describe what I had experienced: the light, the overwhelming love, and the presence of Jesus. It felt impossible to put such a profound encounter into human language, yet, as I spoke, I could see the impact it had on them. My husband listened intently, tears streaming down his face, while my children held onto me as though they feared I might leave again. Returning home was a surreal experience. Everything felt different, as though I was seeing the world through new eyes. The sunlight streaming through the windows seemed brighter, the laughter of my children more precious, and even the small tasks of daily life felt infused with purpose. Every moment felt like a gift, and I was determined not to waste it. I quickly realized that the message Jesus had given me wasn't just for me. It was meant to be shared. I began journaling every detail of my experience, afraid that I might forget even the smallest moment. Writing became a way to process what had happened and to reflect on the profound truths I had learned. I prayed for guidance, asking God to show me how to use my story to help others. At work, as I sit here reflecting on everything that has happened, I realize that my journey is far from over. The experience I had was not just for my sake, but for everyone who might hear this story and feel the stirring of truth in their hearts. I am sharing this because I know there are many who are searching for meaning, for purpose, for hope. If you are reading this, I want you to know that you are deeply loved. Your life has a purpose that is unique to you, and even in the hardest moments, you are never alone. God's love is not something that can be earned or lost. It is freely given, waiting for you to receive it. I urge you to take a moment today to reflect on your own life. Are you living out your purpose? Are you showing kindness and love to those around you? Are you seeking a deeper connection with the one who created you? It's never too late to start. Begin with small steps. A kind word, a moment of prayer, an act of forgiveness. Each small act of love ripples outward, touching more lives than you can imagine. If you are unsure of where to begin, start by seeking God with an open heart. Spend time in prayer, asking Him to guide you. Open His word and let it speak to you. Surround yourself with others who can encourage and support you on this journey of faith. And most importantly, trust that no matter where you are or what you've been through, His love for you is unchanging. The world needs more light, more hope, and more love. You have the power to be that light. You have the ability to make a difference, no matter how small it may seem. As Jesus told me, the smallest acts of love can change the world. I will continue to share my story, not because I have all the answers, but because I want to encourage others to seek the one who does. If my journey can inspire even one person to take a step closer to God, then every moment of this experience will have been worth it. Remember, you are loved, you are seen, you are not alone. Walk in faith and know that God is always with you. Let's make this world a brighter place, together.